Hi, my name is Gary Semic. Welcome to my Motocross Techniques video. I want to take this opportunity to thank my sponsors for their cooperation and help with my motocross schools. Arai, Seat, Duval, Kraus, Maxima, Pro Action Innovations, Scott USA, and Yoko. The main points that we are going to cover include the proper body positions for each riding situation. We'll define the techniques of riding the motorcycle, the physical mechanics of the rider and motorcycle. These are more or less the leverage factors and pivot points. When you can identify and understand these techniques, then you can use them when you're practicing. In time, they will become second nature to you. This is when the rider and motorcycle become one. Then the rider just thinks of what he wants the motorcycle to do, and it happens. But first, it's necessary to know and practice the correct techniques. Without this important foundation, you would just be spinning your wheels. So let's look at some of these body positions. The best way to practice these body positions is to become familiar with them in a stationary situation. You can even practice to coordinate these positions while off the motorcycle. First of all, it's very important to become familiar with the central location, or the attack position. When you are in the central location, all of your body weight is being supported right in the center of the motorcycle, directly over the motorcycle's center of gravity. When in this position, your head should be over the triple clamps, so you can see down the front number plate. Your back should be slightly crouched, and your elbows up and out away from your sides. When the motorcycle is going over rough ground, or any time you need to move while standing, you should move back and forth, not up and down. The correct movement is like a rowing action. Don't ever forget this next factor. It's very important. All of your body weight should be supported on the foot pegs and or the seat. You should not support your body weight on the handlebars unless you absolutely have to, like in the case of being thrown forward. This central location is where you should be at most of the time. It's where all your movements should start from and where you should return when you can. This central location is where you have the most control. Another good technique to practice in the stationary position is the regrip of the throttle. You want to be able to keep your elbow up when you open the throttle. There's a few body movements that you can practice while off the motorcycle to teach your muscles to move like you want them to when you ride. Make every muscle group in your body move like a shock absorber, not like a jackhammer. Make sure your back is going from full straight position to full crouch position. The two most difficult bad habits to break are the straight, rigid back and the drop elbow syndromes. Okay, so that's how you support your body weight on the motorcycle. This allows the motorcycle's geometry to work for your advantage. It maintains a low center of gravity in the center of the motorcycle, right over the motorcycle's pivot point. In order to maintain this body and motorcycle match, you'll have to support your body weight in your legs and lower back. You must keep your upper body, torso, shoulders, head, and arms free to go with the flow of the motorcycle so that you can make adjustments to maintain balance, timing, and control. Your entire body should become an extension of the motorcycle, and the motorcycle an extension of your body. This means that you flow with a controlled rhythm and use all the energy forces to your advantage. To do this, you must be anticipating everything just before it happens. See the track in front of you with your main focus point and your peripheral vision. Your main focus point should always be on the next most important thing coming up. This might be the beginning of a berm, a big square bump on a straightaway, the apex of a corner where you're going to square it off, or the takeoff area of a jump. It definitely takes total concentration when you're riding at this level. Concentration should be automatic. You will have the sensation that everything is happening in a kind of slow motion. You have time to react to everything, yet you're going very fast. With the basic body positions in mind, we'll take a look at how they apply to different situations on the track. First, let's take a look at how these body positions apply to cornering. If If you are fast around the corners, then chances are your lap times will also be fast. You can make up a lot of time in the turns if you have good lines, brake late, and keep your momentum up all the way through the corner. Of course, there are many different types of corners. A smooth sweeper, an off camber, a rutted or berm turn, or any combination. But with all the possibilities, there are certain basic techniques that always apply to cornering. When you enter a corner, get into the attack position. This will cause your weight to be in the center of the motorcycle so that both front and rear suspension will be weighted equally. As you lean the motorcycle over, put your inside foot out in front of you and keep it close to the front wheel. Keep your leg fairly straight, but never lock your knee. Also, never have your knee joint in front of the handlebars. This is the correct technique and will help in preventing knee injuries. There are two basic ways to take a corner. One is sweeping through it on an arc, kind of like your motorcycle is tied to the end of a rope and slung around the corner. When sweeping through a corner, you want to keep up your speed and momentum all the way through the corner, going into, midway through, and exiting the turn. The other way to take a corner is to square it off. This means you go at the part of the turn where you want to square it, fast, straight, and hard. When you get to that part of the corner where you're going to square it, you pivot the motorcycle, make it change directions, and accelerate straight and hard to the next point or out of the corner. To improve your technique on sweeping through a corner, let's look at this practice situation. Here we have laid out a circle track, one that you can keep the engine in the mid-range power in second gear. The idea here is to go around the circle, leaning the motorcycle over as far as possible while trying to get the front and rear tires to just barely break loose and slide. You don't want to build up any berms. This practice technique is designed to practice flat, sweeping turns. Lean the motorcycle over slightly farther than your body. Keep a good portion of your body weight on the outside foot peg and keep your outside leg tight against the gas tank. The rest of your weight should be on the seat, not on the handlebars. Stay in the central location most of the time and move your upper body around to maintain balance and control. Throttle control is very important here. Do not use the brakes for this exercise. You are learning to control and slow the motorcycle down by leaning it way over. You're getting the feel of the wheel. Angle your shoulders into the turn a little. Remember, it's very important to keep your upper body constantly moving and to have quick reflexes. Keep your weight low and in the center of the motorcycle over the motorcycle's pivot point. By moving your upper body around, you'll be adjusting your weight over the motorcycle's pivot point to maintain the proper amount of traction on the front and rear tires. Keep your inside foot out in front of you close to the motorcycle and lightly sliding on the ground. When you do have to put your foot down, try to get it back where it belongs as fast as possible. It's a lot of fun and good practice to get a few guys out there and try passing. Change directions often. This technique will greatly improve your confidence, speed, and control when approaching midway through and exiting sweeping and bermed corners. The other technique we mentioned for cornering is to square it. Here's a way to set up a practice situation for squaring off a corner. Put two markers about 30 yards apart. Move two markers in close on the straights so that you have to go straight from turn to turn. This practice technique will also improve your braking. Accelerate hard down the short straight, aiming for the part of the turn that you want to hit in order to square it. When you're approaching that point, start braking hard with both front and rear brakes. Get the motorcycle slowed down to the desired speed that you want when you're at that part of the corner that you're going to hit in order to square it. Then lean the motorcycle over a little, causing the rear wheel to brake slide around. You should still be using the front brake at this point. When you get the rear wheel halfway around the corner at the apex, start to slip the clutch and gas it, letting go of the brakes at the same time. Deliver just the right amount of power to the rear wheel to go from brake slide to power slide in one fluid motion. Here again, you should change directions often. When you can square these 180-degree corners off smoothly and consistently, you'll be able to square off any angle on the track easily. This is an excellent passing technique. It's also an excellent technique to keep from getting passed because you can protect the inside. That's where most passing is done. If you get a wheel on someone on the inside of a corner, you got them. We mentioned braking when squaring off a corner. Now let's take a closer look. Your ability to stop is your right of way to speed. How long you can keep the gas on while approaching a corner will depend on how well you can slow the motorcycle down for the corner. Not only are the brakes used at the end of a straightaway, the brakes should also be used almost constantly to stabilize the motorcycle and control its speed. It's common knowledge that the front brake has more stopping power than the rear. However, it's very important to develop a natural feel for how much of each to use and when to use them. If you're coming into a smooth corner, you can apply a generous amount of both front and rear brakes. But when the braking area approaching a corner is rough, you're going to use more rear brake than front. The reason for this is the front brake compresses the front forks, which will make those little braking bumps feel like street curbs. You may be able to apply the front brake in segments when braking on rough ground. This means you can apply the front brake on the smooth parts for 3 or 4 feet in between the bumps, letting it off as the front wheel hits the bumps, then back on in the smooth parts. As you use this technique with the front brake, you should keep a constant firm drag on the rear brake. When riding a downhill section that is bumpy, it's very wise not to use too much front brake or to use it very moderately. The rear brake is what you want to use on the downhills. Even if you're on the gas and accelerating on a rough downhill, drag the rear brake. This will stabilize the motorcycle and keep the rear end from kicking up as much. At times, the same holds true on a rough, flat straightaway. Drag the rear brake for extra stability. When you apply the brakes together or separately in a corner, providing that you don't lose traction, it will pull the motorcycle down the way you're leaning, making it turn sharper and, of course, slowing it down. This is what I mean by using your brakes to control your momentum. Use the brakes to make the motorcycle turn better. A good example of this is to apply the front brake in a bermed corner. You can really feel the motorcycle turn sharper. On a downhill, off-cambered bermed corner, it is amazing how good this technique works. When you drag the front brake in a bermed turn, it holds the front wheel in the berm like a slot car. The rear brake is a must to set up for squaring off a turn. You simply apply the rear brake as you begin to lean the motorcycle over, setting up for the brake slide, power slide that we showed in cornering. Remember, you'll have to pull in the clutch when the rear wheel locks up so you don't kill the engine. When you get the motorcycle sliding sideways and at the desired point in the corner, slip the clutch and apply some throttle to exit the corner. You go from brake slide to power slide. A good way to practice braking, here again, is with some markers. It's the same setup for practicing squaring off a turn. But instead of brake sliding around the corner, as you come into the tight turn around the tire, brake as hard as possible. Come almost to a stop, then turn around the tire very tight and close. Accelerate to the next marker and keep repeating. Jumping. This has to be one of the most exciting things about riding. With the high tech of today's machines, it's possible to get some serious airtime. It's also possible because of the rider's technique and timing. When approaching a jump, you should be concentrating on the part of the jump where the motorcycle is going to leave the ground. The attitude the motorcycle takes as it leaves the jump is the same attitude it'll want to follow through the air. So make sure the angle of the motorcycle is somewhat level. In most cases, you'll want the front wheel slightly higher than the rear wheel. The steeper and more abrupt the jump, the more precise your timing will have to be on your body movements and throttle control. Upon takeoff, use your legs to keep your weight in the center of the motorcycle. If you want to jump for distance, you must push down on the foot pegs with your legs just before takeoff. Then lift with your legs as you take off. The rebounding of the suspension will give you a catapulting effect for more height and distance, and use as much throttle as possible. If you want to get back on the ground quickly, do not push down on the suspension. Instead, lift the motorcycle to absorb some of the inertia of the takeoff part of the jump and use as little throttle as possible. If you want to accelerate when you land, land with the rear wheel first and get on the power just before it touches down. This will cause the motorcycle to accelerate as soon as it hits the ground instead of bouncing up, then accelerating. If you want to slow down when you land, it's best to land with the front wheel just before the rear wheel. You can be on the brakes slightly as you land, but not so hard that it causes the front wheel to slide out. Also, make sure you land with your body weight slightly back. To absorb the heavy impact on landing, start with your body in a forward position and row back through the full range of motion as you land. When you get those aspects of jumping mastered, here are some more advanced techniques to practice as well. One is known as the clicker. The trick to this maneuver is to twist the motorcycle sideways with a twisting of your hips upon takeoff, as you toss the rear end out slightly. This will cause the motorcycle to fly sideways through the air. The gyroscopic force from the spinning of your front wheel will give you extra control while airborne. Just remember to straighten up before you land. Another aerobatic trick is to tap the rear brake while airborne. Pull the clutch in at the same time so you don't kill the engine. By stopping the spinning force of the rear wheel, it will cause the front wheel to drop slightly. The same spinning force in the opposite direction raises the front end slightly by grabbing a handful of throttle. Remember, it's very important to always use the proper body positions and leverage factors between you and the motorcycle in all of these riding situations. Remember to start out small and work your way up gradually as you gain confidence and control. There are three major types of bumps and whoops. One, bike bumps, both braking and accelerating. These are made by the motorcycles as they chew up the terrain. Two, natural terrain bumps. And three, man-made bumps. Here again, there are basic techniques that apply to all bumps. Hang on tight. No, just kidding. Actually, it's more like hang on loosely, but don't let go. Remember, the upper body has to be loose and relaxed, moving with the flow of the motorcycle. This would be difficult if you were hanging on too tight. Of course, there are many times when a rider must hang on tight, but it's only for an instant. As you get better with your timing and confidence, you'll be able to relax more and more. Beginner and amateur riders usually hang on too tight. That's one reason that they sometimes have problems with their forearms pumping up. Even when a top pro rider is riding too tense and not relaxed, he too may have problems with his arms pumping up. It's very important to keep your body weight supported on the foot pegs and not on the handlebars when riding over rough terrain. Let the motorcycle teeter-totter under you. Keep your weight in the center and move back as the rear wheel hits the bigger bumps. Many times you will have to pull back on the handlebars to stabilize the motorcycle and to keep the rear wheel hooking up. It's like pull back to go forward. Don't let your whole body start moving up and down over the motorcycle. Instead, move from the central location back and forth. Grip the tank with your knees. Take up the tension in your legs and lower back, not your arms. Make sure the front wheel hits off the tops of the bigger whoops. Don't let it drop in the holes, the deep part of the whoops. Also, keep the attitude of the motorcycle straight. Don't even let the rear end start to swap from side to side, so you end up doing tank slappers. This is where the stationary body positions off of the motorcycle will help you with your style and technique. Let's look at ruts and grooves. Soft terrain tracks are going to form ruts. Some riders don't like or are afraid of these deep-lined grooves through the earth. A lot of riders have been injured by twisting an ankle or a knee because of a rut. When you know all the do's and don'ts about riding ruts, you'll have another advantage over riders with less experience. One of the most important do's is to look far ahead up the rut, maybe even at the end of it. This is known as targeting. You'll go to what you're looking at. This will help you to stay centered in the rut and follow it. If you're watching too close in front of you, just like in front of your front fender, your wheels are going to be more likely to climb out of the groove. So focus your attention far up the rut and go for that point. As you're approaching that point, look farther up ahead at another point, and so on. Always look ahead and predetermine your line. This way you will also see better lines. If one groove starts to get bad, look for a better one. Sometimes the exiting part of a rut coming out of a corner will get very bumpy from accelerating bumps. When you're hitting these bumps lap after lap, you may begin to feel like somebody's been punching you in the stomach. So a good maneuver is to get out of the rut before you get to the rough part. Get onto a smoother line. When the grooves begin to get deep, especially when you're compressing the suspension at the same time, you may have to keep your toes up, and if they get even deeper, you'll have to ride with the balls of your feet on the foot pegs. When they get really deep, you may have to take your feet off of the foot pegs. You'll have to sit on the front of the seat in the attack position and hold your feet up slightly in front and above the foot pegs. You'll probably have to dab your feet occasionally to maintain control. That's okay as long as you stay in the attack position and get your feet back up quickly. If you fail to do this and sit too far back on the seat and your foot starts to drag behind you, chances are you're going to get dragged off the back of the motorcycle. In deep ruts, make sure you get into the correct gear before you enter the rut, because you probably won't be able to shift once you're in there. When you land in a rut from a jump, make sure to land straight and centered in the rut. Your suspension is going to compress when you land, so land with the balls of your feet on the foot pegs. This will keep your feet from hitting the ground and getting ripped off the foot pegs. Land with the front wheel up a little higher than normal. Make sure to get on the gas just before you land to accelerate and stabilize the motorcycle. When you're using a berm in a corner, and most corners do have berms, make sure you focus on the beginning of the berm as you're approaching it. Try to enter the berm at the same angle that the berm is going. As we mentioned earlier, dragging your front brake in the berm will get you set up and hold you in it. Once you're set up in the berm, slip the clutch and gas it to keep your momentum smooth and slingshot out of the corner. Smoothness and momentum is the key. Passing. Few things can be more frustrating than to be stuck behind a slower rider. The single most important factor about passing is to look past the rider in front of you. You'll know where he is, and you'll know what he's going to do because you'll see him in your peripheral vision. But your main focus point should always be on the line that you're going to take past them. What happens to riders that can't pass is they get hypnotized into watching the guy's rear wheel. They even follow him off the track if he makes a mistake. They fail to see a way around them because they're watching him so much. Always look past them. That way, you'll see the line you're going to take around them. Passing can be very difficult on some tracks. In these situations, you'll have to set them up and try to get a wheel under them going into a corner. You may even have to bump them a little to make the move stick. The squaring technique we talked about earlier is a good passing maneuver. Set them up and get a wheel under them somewhere. Other tracks may have a lot of passing room because of a variety of lines. In these cases, you may just have a faster line and get by them clean. Another thing to be aware of is try to keep your goggles from getting roosted. Of course, you should try to stay out of his roost as much as possible. But there are going to be times when you just can't avoid it. So the best thing that you can do is to try to anticipate when it's coming and duck your head just before it gets there. When you get blasted anyway, that's why you have tear-offs. When passing, you have to be aggressive, but you must also be smart. Good judgment is very important. Exercise and diet. This is a big subject, and there could be a video on it alone. But let's touch on some of the general information and common sense facts about this often overlooked subject. Diet first. Common sense, attitude, and awareness. It's so simple and logical, but somehow the emotional taste buds change that simple logic into a poor diet. It's like we mentioned earlier, the rider and motorcycle must become one operating unit. Would you put a low-grade fuel oil mixture in your motorcycle? Of course not. That would take horsepower away. Then why do you put less than high-octane fuel in your body? That would take strength, endurance, and concentration away. These are the 90s. It's no mystery what foods are good and bad. I see a lot of young riders in my motocross schools who are overweight and out of shape, others that are too thin and out of shape. I see the overweight ones eating junk food and drinking soda pop, and the thin ones starving because they don't feel like eating. It's ridiculous, but true. If you don't have the determination and willpower to eat right, how will you have the determination and willpower to be competitive in motocross? What about exercise? This is no mystery either. Today we've got it down to a science. In motocross, the most important exercise is actually riding the motorcycle. But that can only take your conditioning so far. You will reach a plateau, and that's it. To reach higher levels of fitness, you must do supplemental training methods. Strength training. Muscle endurance training. Aerobic capacity training. And aerobic endurance training. You should learn to combine these forms of training into your lifestyle so that you can grow and develop to higher levels of fitness. This type of training not only develops your body, but also your willpower, determination, and confidence. Well, that pretty much sums up this video. But before closing, I'd like to leave you with this last bit of information. Many things have changed in motocross since the Europeans dominated the sport, but many things remain the same and can never change. It's still man and machine against the track and competition, and the better the suspension gets, the bigger the bumps get. But I really like the way former world champ and the Iron Man of motocross, Sweden's Rolf Tiblin, put it. He said, it's hard work for these young guys, and many of them don't understand that it's so important to take care of themselves. They don't understand that it takes 6 or 7 years to get up there, and many of them can't take it. A guy can get up to a point, and that's it. But you have to work your heart and lungs, you have to work your muscles, and you have to ride your bike. That's 3 different things. You have to coordinate these things, and then you can get up there. But understand that it takes time, and it's hard work.